Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first meeting of July. It is Monday, July 6th, and it is a convening of the regular, by some definitions, that's a joke, City Council. Please stand if you're able to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda is four things that are grouped under the consent agenda. So these are items that have already been discussed either at the Public Works and Finance, I couldn't remember what the F was for a second, Public Works and Finance Committee meeting or the Admin Committee meeting. Those are made up by 3 of the council members, and those meet on the second and fourth Mondays at 4 p.m. They are streamed on our YouTube channel. They are recorded. They are on our YouTube channel, and there are also minutes made available, usually trailing, but there are minutes available if you'd like to see the more rigorous discussion that often accompanies these agenda items. But they are previously vetted by council, considered routine, and at least half of council has to decide to put them on consent agenda. So before us tonight, we have 4 items.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion from Evan, second from Drew. Any further discussion? Yeah, sure.
Just one thing, I just want to draw attention to item D, which is a Rendezvous in the Park alcohol use request. And this is just a shameless plug to plug Rendezvous in the Park, which is happening next weekend in East City Park.
And also it did start as a Moscow Arts Commission event before being spun off as its own nonprofit. So I will allow the sidebar before we ask for further discussion and go to vote. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Drew. Here we go for the vote. Drew.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Evan.
Aye.
And Bryce.
Aye.
Beautiful. Thank you. So consent agenda is approved as presented. No mayoral appointments tonight. I have a couple that will be on our agenda for the July 20th meeting. And you'll get an email with the memo about those. Public comment. So we, at the beginning of every city council meeting, we set aside 15 minutes where folks can come and come up to the mic, introduce themselves. It can be good, bad, or of a neutral commentary nature. And for up to 3 minutes, which means we have time for 5 takers, if you'd so like to come and address council. You address council, you don't address the audience, but we ask that you come and introduce yourself, let us know where you live. So long as it is not pending before the Board of Adjustment on the agenda before us tonight or pending before planning and zoning, most everything is fair game, but you may get interrupted or gavelled down if it falls into one of those other buckets. So any takers who would like to come up to the mic, please come to the podium. Sure. Introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
Oh, right here. So where's the mic? Oh, right here.
Yep. If you want to tilt it up a little bit, we should be able to hear you okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
My name's Joe Thompson. I live in the Ambassador, 122 North Washington. I represent the Idaho affiliate of the National Federation of the Blind. And I'm president of the local Palouse Empire chapter. And I'm kind of wondering why we don't have audible signals at the crossings, streetlight crossings. And I would like to advocate that we get some at the county level and at the state level. And I was hoping that this body could petition the state to install some of those audible signals for our, 95 Route 95 crossings and some of the other crossings that are, I guess, would be considered at the county level. That's it.
Thank you, Joe. And, I'm embarrassed that it hadn't even occurred to me that that's what we don't have, despite all but 2 of our traffic signals in town being overseen by the state. I'm happy to visit with our ITD counterparts since most everything falls under Highway 8 or Highway 95, which are technically ITD jurisdiction. But Joe, thank you for bringing that to our attention. And Yeah, let's see what we can do. We're going to make good trouble with this, I hope. So I appreciate you coming. Okay, beautiful. Come on up. Introduce yourself and share what's on your mind.
Mayor, council, public. My name is John Slagboom. I live in Moscow, Idaho. I'd like to second what this gentleman over here just said about the crossing signals. I think that is a very important issue. I do have a question before I start. I was just wondering if there's going to be a proclamation for the 4th of July and America's 250th. You can answer that afterwards, or if you please, I suppose. But
We did not do a proclamation, but which I realize just is the nature of the timing. And I'm not sorry. Let me just pause. We won't run the clock down on that. We did not do a proclamation for the 4th of July, America 250, which was nothing other than just the way holidays fell on the calendar, and we didn't get it in time. So I will evaluate if we want to do a retrospective one. But go ahead, John.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm here to talk about capital spending in the fiscal year 2027 proposed budget and the East City Park stage. Big surprise to nobody. And the proposed budget, the stage is set at $796,000. That figure sits as a note inside a single parks appropriation of $2,164,100. $2,164,100. That bundles 5 projects together. If the council adopts the lump sum, the money can move among these projects without another public vote. The city intends to sign the construction contract for the stage with Design West in July, roughly a month before the August 17th budget hearing. You would commit the money before the only public hearing where the public can speak to the spending. And all I'm asking with this public comment is that you would hold that contract until a public hearing on the spending is held in August. That $796,000 can be put to other priorities, such as a roadway improvement program, which was cut from $3.6 million to $1.36 million this year, a 56% reduction, and the stage equals roughly 59% of that entire program. Downtown improvements are funded at $200,000 for design only. With this money, we could be fixing potholes and improving the downtown. The maximum new property tax this year, the 3% increase, plus the final foregone totals about $259,000 in the proposed budget, and the stage is 3 times that. The city never has held a public hearing on whether to spend the money on the stage. The only hearings were on how the stage looks. I'm asking the council to hold before committing further funds to the stage in July. Divert that money to roads or downtown, or at a minimum, wait till the public budget hearing in August before spending further taxpayer dollars on this special project. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. I will clarify a couple of things. So the proposed budget for fiscal year 27 has been provided to council. I think we did it June 12th, 13th. And thank you. And so that's also been made available to the public online. Anyone is available to submit question to us at any point between now and when the public hearing occurs. We have the only required hearing by the state. The requirement from the state is that we notice the public and submit it, I think, in April to declare when in August or prior to the state deadline, we will have the public comment on our city budget. And this year it is scheduled for August 17th. I almost said 15th. Thank you, Evan. August 17th at 7 p.m. And it'll happen during a regular city council meeting. We will have a public hearing format. I also want to clarify that this Wednesday, the 8th of July, City Council will be meeting for an all-day budget workshop. It is open to the public. It is here in this room. We go through every single requested line item. And again, the budget is open to the public. If you want to email me or any of us or staff, we will get you the link. It is a 300-page document. It is thorough. We are happy to answer any questions. I've been able to ask lots of questions over the past 6 months as well. But I want to clarify, that's not the only time that the public can provide comment on the budget. It just may be the only time that you're doing it under the auspice of it being grouped in with what our public comment testimony is. So clarifying there. I am going to say one more thing. I'm so sorry. I'm going to say one more thing. We haven't had a public hearing on if yes or no, we're gonna do a stage, but we also didn't do a public hearing in the nature that you're describing, John, in terms of the city shop or our streets program or our slurry seal program, because it is considered an infrastructure project that is defined in our capital improvement plan that we have as a rolling identified group of things that we need to do for improvement. It is considered a capital investment and improvement project. We welcome feedback on any of those and the prioritization of those at any time. The award will not happen in July. It hasn't gone out to bid yet. Bill, am I forgetting any details on the Design West? It won't be on the July 20th agenda. I guess I should clarify, but council,
Correct. We don't expect to have the bid award until probably late August, early September, I would expect. I would also clarify that this was in the FY26 budget funding
Thank
for this
you.
project, and that was, there was a public
Approved.
hearing on the adoption of the 26 budget, so it's not like there was not an opportunity for public comment or testimony on this particular project when the 26 budget was adopted.
which would have been around August. It was the first week of August, I think, first meeting of August of council for 2025 of last year. So, okay. I ate into our 15 minutes, but I'm okay with it. I set the rules tonight. So please introduce yourself. Please tell us what's on your mind, name and where you live. And yes, let's go from there.
Hi, I'm Rigel Tavella. I live at 625 Ridge Road. And I wanted to offer comment on this duplex ordinance you guys are voting on.
Ooh, so, okay, this is the spot where I do, so we will have a public comment portion after we get the update. So it's technically, since it's a code change, we'll have
Oh,
the
perfect.
chance to group you in with that. It'll be a little later in the agenda.
No problem.
Okay, groovy. So
Awesome.
I-
Get this man his talking things.
I am noting. We'll get Joe the audio beacons. We love it. Okay. Rigel, R-I-G-E-L? J-E-L, great name. Okay, love it. Okay, introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
I'm Tim Park, 403 East A Street. Mayor Lewis, council members, audience. This morning, coming up on 11:30, I was in my car at the south side of the intersection of Jefferson and Third. If you look out the windows, you can see it. It's a busy intersection with parking on the south side, so sight lines are reduced, and consequently, I'm cautious about pushing out onto Third. I was easing my way out about to accelerate into the eastbound lane when an older gent, 40s, 50s maybe, riding a small electric motorbike, took a left turn onto Jefferson from the bike lane in front of me and sped off to wherever. I don't know if the rider realized just how close he came to ruining both our Mondays, but I did. So I drove the last 5 blocks to my house. I decided that my Monday trip and stay in Lewiston could wait until Tuesday so that this evening I could stand before you and once again remind you that Moscow, like many other communities throughout the U.S., now have many new electric vehicles traveling our streets and sidewalks. I'm all for alternatives to cars, but there is a crying need for educational campaigns on the part of municipalities like Moscow to inform and instruct this new class of riders what their fellow motorists expect of them when they're riding their e-sheens on the street. However, I will steadfastly contend that Moscow sidewalks, at least those in the downtown corridor, should be for pedestrians only. I demand, if I could, that the city council immediately start addressing this educational issue. Otherwise, without such an educational campaign aimed at promoting safe and sane e-sheen riding, an e-sheen rider is going to die in a car e-sheen accident on a street in Moscow. I don't want to be the driver of that car. And I trust no one in this room wants to be that driver either. Thank you for granting me this time to address the council.
Thank you, Tim.
you.
And
One thing.
sure,
Mayor Lewis,
come back to the mic.
You can call me Mr. Park, and I'll call you.
Heard, Mr. Park. Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Park, one thing I will share, I had tasked the Transportation Commission with discussing education initiatives specifically focused on e-bikes and what we can do for scooters and riders, drivers, youths. And they didn't meet quorum because summer months are hard in June. So it's something that we do believe in. I believe council also backs this, but it's also important that we engage at the right level. So I'm asking our commission members at the Transportation Commission to help us with this. And I think it's on their agenda for beautiful first Thursday. So thank you, Mr. Park. I will stay on it. And thank you for being an aware defensive driver, because that is really scary. And I'm sorry to hear that happened today. Okay, beautiful. Hello, please introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind.
My name is Nils Peterson, Hills and Rivers Housing Trust, 627 North Van Buren. I want to thank you for the small thing that you did already tonight for affordable housing. That was an allowance for somebody to live in an RV on a longer term basis next door to their children. I want to suggest, I understand that RVs and tiny houses are not the same in multiple ways. I would like to suggest that you think about tiny houses more. Boise has zoning code already in place and in use that it allows for tiny houses. I think Moscow ought to consider something similar. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Peterson. Appreciate it. Okay, any other takers since I ate up a few of those minutes? Tiny homes, got it. Okay, beautiful. Next item on our agenda is the written decision regarding the appeal of a Board of Adjustment decision regarding 513 South Main Street with Mike Ray. Welcome, Mike.
Evening, Your Honor, Counsel. So on June 15th, 2026, the council heard an appeal of the Board of Adjustment decision regarding a proposed conditional use permit for a property located at 513 South Main Street. During the council's consideration of the appeal of the 15th, the council reversed the Board of Adjustment's decision and directed staff to prepare the written decision to reflect the council's action. So that written decision has been prepared. It's in the packet for you tonight, and it's before you for your consideration, potential adoption. So certainly try to answer any questions you had about this.
Thank you, Mike. Questions from council for staff or other? It is a 4-page document. Evan, I see a slight hand gesture.
Oh, I can always say something about
Sure.
that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I did read through it and I appreciated it. I find it to be no less arbitrary if we're going to assign that nomenclature to the Board of Adjustment decision that we reversed with that. So it falls into that same trapping of what words mean and whether our definition of a word or our definition of arbitrary is better than that of the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Drew. Oh, sorry. Drew gave me a,
I was going to move to approve. Okay.
Go ahead.
Go for it. I move to approve the proposed written decision as presented.
that way.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay, I've got a motion from Drew and a second from Sandra. Further discussion or questions for staff before we go to a vote? Okay, Drew. Thank you, Mike. Okay, Sandra.
Aye.
Drew.
Aye.
Evan.
Hey,
Bryce.
Aye.
And Scott.
Aye.
Beautiful. That passes 4-1. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff, for preparing that relevant. It's not relevant. That's not the right word. Relevant statement of criteria is the wrong word for this. Thank you for providing us with the verbiage. And I don't need to read it by title or anything, right, Lori? We're good to go as presented. Okay. Groovy. Item number 5 on our agenda is the City Shop mural artist selection with Megan Cherry. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. It's the colors and shapes and patterns and pictures part of the meeting. It's a pleasure to serve. So today we are requesting approval for the artist selection for the mural wall, and we're requesting to enter contract with the artist. And so I know we've looked at this project timeline before, but just so we're doing it in front of full council, this project started in 2024. Public art projects tend to have longer timelines, as I noted in committee. And I want to say again here, the thing that was so wonderful about this project was that we got involved early on in the building process out there at the city shop. And that really creates a situation where we can be thoughtful about what is going in, how it fits the neighborhood, how it fits the needs of the facility. And so that was a really wonderful component of this project, and something that I think we're all hoping to repeat again in the future when we have the opportunity. And so ultimately today, we are at the point where we're looking for approval to move forward with this artist and with the design, looking to install the mural by end of September of this year. So that's what you're seeing on the left-hand side in those photos, the photo of the wall in daytime, and then also at night. As you can see, we've got some pretty snazzy lighting set up there. And so that's going to create a really nice pedestrian spot for both daytime and nighttime that we can actually see the mural all day long. So that's wonderful. Okay. A reminder about our project theme. This is of the two projects that we're presenting tonight. That both of them had a lot of public input, which is wonderful because then we know that the projects are reflecting as much community desire as we possibly can. And so we put out a survey for public input on the theme for the mural. And, you know, as I noted during committee, the Palouse landscape is always an enduring interest for folks for good reason. It's beautiful and it's, you know, just such a unique place to live. But the theme that really rose to the surface was that folks wanted to see something that reflected the work that's being done at the city shop. And so we took the tack of sort of saying that the infrastructure, the landscape that we're creating in the community shapes our social interactions within the city of Moscow. And so we wanted to celebrate the folks who are making that happen and the equipment, which sparks imagination for anybody, I think. And so that's the theme that we're working with, that we sent out to artists to think about as they were creating the design. Here in the photo, you're seeing the wall being built this spring. This was an incredible project. They were done way ahead of time, in fact, and the engineering staff here in community development was great to work with, and they took this part of the project and ran with it, and it was really a great teamwork moment. So the artist submissions that we got during the RFQ period, we ended up getting 21 submissions of qualifications. Of those, the selection panel wanted to see site-specific designs from 4 finalists. And as the process, as you can see in your agenda packet, the process was lengthy, a lot of eyeballs on this project. And so ultimately the artist recommended by the MAC is Taylor Shaw, whose piece that you see here is called Forged in Moscow. And Taylor talked a lot in and you can see his artist statement here, but I wanted to note that he talked a lot about in his video presentation about how the equipment that we see running around town doing all kinds of amazing work sparks the imagination for kids and the kids within us. And so, you know, he was really understanding the importance of that equipment and what you know, the importance of the work that those folks are doing. Taylor also talked a bit about and actually you can see in his, you know, just in the design that the geometric language was important to him. And so, you know, what I'm talking about there is that you can see some of those rounded forms, you know, body parts, things that are typically round in the world have been sort of reduced to geometric planes, sort of like a soccer ball, where it's something that's round that's made up with geometric shapes. And in the arts, that almost always speaks to structure. So I think that's what the artist is communicating about here, is the structure of infrastructure. And so he did present the selection panel with 2 different colorways. This was the first of the 2, and the selection panel and the Arts Commission both preferred this colorway. They did recommend a couple of design edits. I spoke with the artist. He is open to making these changes. And basically, the basis of it is essentially that we're not using a lot of cement trucks. We're not using wood chippers and side by side. So there were a couple of elements of subject matter that just didn't pertain as precisely to the work that's happening out at the shop. And so replacing some of those things with something that's a little bit more parks related. So with council's approval, I will meet with the artist and some folks from the city shop to make sure that we're swapping out for subject matter that does reflect the work that they're doing. Okay, and then with that, the MAC recommendation is to move forward with this design by Taylor Shaw with the design edits as presented, and then that is also the staff recommendation. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Megan, my only question, because the phrasing, I just want to clarify. Staff's recommendation is also to move forward with Mac's ask
Yes.
of the design edits. Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion from council. Sandra.
This is, I find this a very happy thing to be looking at, which isn't always associated necessarily with any shop, not just a city shop, but any shop. They just seem like concrete and dust, and you're trying not to slip in the oil because when you get home, you don't want the dog to lick up the oil that you got on your shoes, right? That's my idea of shops. And so to see this makes me really happy. I love how bright and vibrant it is. And I really, really like that it's highlighting the great work that our staff does around town. I always smile when I see the trucks fixing things before they break and doing all the work. And I love that we have this big giant wall that is just dedicated to that with really happy colors. So thanks.
I was just gonna say, I was surprised that you guys picked this one because it was my favorite and I'm like the least artistic person. So I've been through most of the last 6 months in the process, and it has been very, they put in a lot of work. So to get to this point, I'm really excited for it to see it later this year.
And I think to echo Scott's comment, the Moscow Arts Commission, is comprised of folks that are very committed to the arts and representing Moscow in a very far-reaching way. And so I think that the work that they've put in to get here is really, really good. And
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
That's really good.
and I think to that end, I don't know if Arts Commission has any openings, but
So let me just clarify. There are openings. However, I am interested in, there are openings. There are more listed online that than we are likely going to fill, which is a different conversation. But as far as making sure that our commission bodies are able to meet quorum, and we can put this on the minutes if you want, Lori. I am interested in making sure that we are right sizing the number of commission members, and also for my own sanity, making sure if it's easy for us to just say there are going to be 9 members in every single commission body, great, because there's a bit of a
frustration.
Yeah, and it's driving me bonkers, to be quite frank. So anything else, Bryce, you'd like
No,
to? Okay.
and those commissions are always open to the public.
This is true.
So
The-
if
the
you ever want
current
to see how the
openings.
commission operates and how we arrive at making this decision, those are able to be attended. So
Thank you. Drew.
Yeah, thank you, Megan, for being here. Echo similar sentiments that have been said. Just a clarifying question. So when these edits are being suggested to the artist, as you meet with the artist, modifications perhaps, are we going to know what those modifications are, or is it just going to happen?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So I think what we'll probably do is get together and have a meeting with a couple of city staff members and the artist, and the city, the folks at the shop are really going to be the ones suggesting the subject matter edits. And then the artist will go and make those edits and send the design back to us. We have the opportunity for a couple of follow-up, tinker with a couple of things. And then ultimately, the mayor would be approving that finalized design. But the changes would be, not to overall style, just individual elements of subject matter.
Well, that's great. No, and again, I'm happy to see this be happening. So thank you.
Evan, I saw your hand go up.
Yes, thank you, Megan. And I participated in some of those early meetings for this, and it's really wonderful to see that commission work so efficiently and get the word out and get all the submissions and all that. And so kudos to you and the Moscow Arts Commission. I think they did a tremendous job, especially with two of these running parallel, as we'll find out, of getting these ready to be installed here this year. So these are assets for Moscow, and I think for me, the big question is how it'll look when you're walking along the wall right beside it, as opposed to from the distance. So I'm ready to give it that view. But thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Megan, I have one question, and this question is one that I think applies to both item 5 and the next item on our agenda. How often has council asked or authorized, between council and MAC, asked artists to edit their designs? To make changes beyond just like, I guess, sizing, but the content designs, because I'm not sure I've seen that since I've been on this side of the desk.
I'm trying to think if there's anything in my, not that I can think of. It's not uncommon in public art. I'm having a hard time recalling anything that's happened here at City of Moscow, but it's not uncommon. And in fact, as I was calling references for all of the finalists, that's one of the first things that references usually say is, oh yeah, there were comments from the community, or we needed to adjust the design and the artist was open to it. So it's not uncommon. And sometimes with, projects that are specifically representing a subject matter area, those details have to be right.
Yeah.
And the artist might not necessarily know that the side-by-side doesn't apply to City Shop. I mean, you could sort of see how that might make sense, but it doesn't fit with City Shop work. And so it would be really difficult for the artist to know that on the front end. So that's why we're starting to move into, wanting to open that space to say, we could ask for a couple edits and this thing would fit perfectly, instead of saying, no, that one has a side by side. We're not going to go move forward with it at all, because one small, or 2 or 3 small edits could make that a perfect fit. So that's something that we're trying to figure out, how to do that in a way that is respectful to the artists and the artist's vision and their time, but also make sure that, as the city organization, that the city is getting what it needs as well.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, that was my last question. So,
I did have.
Sure, Drew.
Sorry.
No, you're good for it.
It just occurred to me as I was pondering it. Not to put it on spot or anything, Megan, but I just know with past vandalism on murals, are we planning on putting like a anti-graffiti code over the top of this?
Yeah,
Okay, just
yeah,
wanted to double check.
absolutely. Yep, the wall is we'll see the wall base coated here in the next couple weeks. And then the muralist will install the mural by the end of September. And then we have a local painter who will spray, it's a 2-part anti-graffiti clear coat. And yeah, it's a really good consideration. It's right there at, human height, this one. So it's pretty accessible, but a lot of local communities, and I think we've noticed this with public art here, that, there are some exceptions, but when a surface has artist attention, oftentimes that deters people from wanting to do any graffiti on it. So we're going to knock on wood on that. So there. But yeah, I think the folks in this neighborhood are really going to I hope that they're going to love it.
I will enjoy that intersection a lot more for sure. Okay. Any other questions, comments, Sandra, or moving a certain way? Okay.
I move that we approve the design by Taylor Shaw with revisions as recommended by the Moscow Arts Commission and the Associated Professional Services Agreement.
Second.
Motion from Sandra, second from Drew. Further discussion? Okay. Sandra,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Evan,
Aye.
Bryce,
Aye.
and Drew.
Aye.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Megan is staying up here for item number 6, which is the Moscow Police Department Sculpture Artist Selection.
All right, better by the dozen. Here we go. Similarly, these two projects moved alongside each other. That's not typically our workflow. Usually, one project of this scale would be happening at once, but timing just worked out that this fit. And there was staff capacity to do it. And so excited to share the second project. This is going to become hopefully will become a part of the permanent public art collection. And today we're asking for approval for the artist selection and contract for this sculpture at the police department. Again, timeline on this one is a bit shorter. There was a point maybe late last summer when Chief Dollinger popped into my office to talk about art. And all of a sudden we realized, wow, we could get a piece in place at the police station in time for the 20th anniversary commemoration of this incident from 2007, right? And so this is a shorter timeline, but it seems to be working so far, so good. So ultimately, what we're looking for here is approval to move forward with selected artists. We have gone through the RFQ process. We've had a selection panel and the Arts Commission look at everything. If we can approve an artist now, we can confirm design and start contract with the artist and install by end of April of 27. So that's would get us right in and installed and complete right before that 20th anniversary commemoration. Again, project description here, and I noted this in committee, would like to say it again. Chief Dollinger did reach out to Officer Newbill's family during the early stages of this project, and their preference was that this project would represent everyone who is involved in that incident and be more broadly representative of police work as a whole rather than being specifically tied to Officer Newbill. So those of you who might be noting that I'm not using Newbill incident, that is why, because this truly is something that's reflecting what we chose to frame it as end of watch. Meaning that when we end our watch, that's the end of a shift. It could be a retirement, and it could be at loss of life in the line of duty. And really, there's so much work that goes on at end of watch, no matter how the watch ends, right? And that's physical work, that's mental work, and that's emotional work that goes on long after the end of watch. And so we wanted to do something that really represents that experience for folks in public safety. Okay. I had the opportunity to spend time with retired and current police officers who are really poetic in describing their work. And I thought that was something worth saying a couple of times. I know I said that at committee as well, but that it was really lovely to get to know that tradition. And a lot of what they talked about was this legacy of service. We're handing police service from one officer to the next. One retired officer brought up multiple times that it's this leap into the unknown, that every shift that starts, it's a leap into the unknown. And there's a joy and an interest and an excitement and a fear about that. And so all of the language in this project description was prompted by conversations with retired and current police officers. And that's what went out to artists as they were developing their designs. So we had 6 submissions during the initial RFQ period. Of those, 2 created site-specific designs. Of those 2, the selection panel and the MAC recommended this piece called Eternal Watch by Ken McCall. little bit about Ken McCall. Ken is had a career as an I'm trying to think of the right word. Aircraft construction, and so he's got a lot of experience with fabrication and engineering. This piece is designed to, and one note I want to make about this slide and is that this building, and I don't think the artist could have known this building does not see this much direct sunlight, but we will see a couple of slides later on where we will see some lighting that is also part of this project. So I'll note a couple of formal choices that the artist made throughout these slides. The bottom, the part at the bottom there, the badge shape with the negative space that represents a police officer, that's made from Corten steel, weathering steel. It's intended to rust, but it's not going to rust and create a structural issue, right? And then the wings are from stainless steel. The wings hold a clock. This is a moment that is a reference to the Newbill incident, and to Newbill specifically. Is the clock is set at 1:49, and that was Officer Newbill's badge number, and so that's just a recognition of that person. One thing that I wanted to mention about the style, we ended up talking about art history a little bit more in these projects than I thought we would, but one comment that came through a few times in the public input about these designs was a Hunger Games reference. I had to Google because it's not something I was familiar with, but I mentioned that to the artist when we chatted, and he said, well, that's so interesting and great. It's perfect because the Hunger Games is influenced by Art Deco, and this artist is heavily influenced by Art Deco as well. So for those who are not familiar, Art Deco, you can think about, sort of the interwar period, the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building. Here locally, the New Art Theater is a really great example, right? So that stylistic reference for those who thought that they were seeing something that looks like the Hunger Games, there's a really great reason for it, and there's an art historical explanation for it. So it's a neat element. The next piece of this is the words that you see around that negative space of the police officer. All of those words are that you see on the screen are placeholder for now. We will actually do another public input session to gather words that folks feel represent police work, and that will go out to the whole community. And the artist intends for that to be a community input moment. So what you're seeing there is just placeholder, but that's going to be another really great opportunity for the public to have a voice in it. Okay, and here what we see is the view at night. We'll be working with a contractor here to put lighting in at this site as well. And what I think is really neat about this is we see not only the sculpture, but the shadow of the sculpture projected onto the building. Suggested design edits for this were just to adjust the scale and potentially the position of the wings. And that's something very similar to the mural project. I would just meet with the artist and with Chief Dollinger and figure out how to, to approach those design edits. And then once again, the mayor would approve. So the MAC recommendation is to move forward with the design by Ken McCall, and that is also the staff recommendation. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Megan. Before we go to council for questions, I want to clarify, because I just pulled up the public comment document, just to remind folks, so while the public comments for these sorts of projects are received in aggregate and anonymized, we still see them. They're published as we receive them. And so just for folks to understand, but based on a couple of those more colorful comments, I wanted to address a common theme talking about Moscow's decision to use this taxpayer money for public art. So in 2004, this ordinance, I just looked it up, ordinance 2004-3, council decided that it was a priority of the city for us to dedicate 1% of, oh no, and we moved it to which location? Sorry, guys, hang on. 2004, establishing the 1% for Arts Fund, the ordinance states that the policy of the city to support public art in order to enhance public facilities and the quality of life for Moscow citizens. 1% of city-funded capital improvement projects is dedicated to fund public art. And I want to clarify, so this is the 2026 adopted budget. It's like $130,000 that sits in that fund. I'm happy to own it. It's publicly available. But to cut off some of those questions or colorful comments that we received and were in the public packet, just wanted to add that. So with that, council, do you have questions for staff or comment? Scott, if you want.
No, I'm
Okay, no pressure,
I'm
but-
good. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, Bryce,
I think
sure.
to kind of also some of the feedback that was received that it sounds like the MAC is responding to was the size of the wings, right? Like that was a theme that I think came up a decent amount. So I'm happy to hear that that's a recommendation to go back, rework that, but also in conversation, like the space that you're trying to fill at this location is also really unique, right? And so the idea of it being like really small, it wouldn't hold or command attention in that space either, right? So finding that balance of how to, put something that's there in this capacity while it also not be diminished is that fine line. So I'm happy to hear that those recommendations are going back to the artist. And I look forward to seeing what the final design looks like. So
Thanks, Bryce. Drew, if you want.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk about art. And I also love Art Deco. So it's actually Sketch and Bridge this weekend. That's Art Deco. But anyway, that's besides the point. So one thing that I'm glad we're having these conversations. And I'm glad that there's been conversations been hosted. For example, the last one we had about like what we're considering these modifications. I understand. This one I find unique, these modifications. And this is where I'll disagree with friend and counselor Blankenship over here. It's the only reason is this being a structural piece and where it's at, I'm on board with like the artist's interpretation of how the space is and how he's thought about how the light will hit the space. Especially in context of, I think it's on par for where we need to be with like a theme and where it's at. So compared to the last one that we just spoke about, we wanted it more consistent with what the activities were happening at the shop. In this case, it is on par with what is happening at this location. And I also think going back and reworking it, I don't know. I'm comfortable where it's at, and seeing other things, I just don't think it's absolutely necessary. I trust the guides built airplanes, and because he's also going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, how I understand the packet, how I've understood everything up to this point, he's also going to be fabricating this himself. Correct?
Yeah, this artist does all of his own fabrication, which is
Phenomenal.
great. Yeah, it's actually, it is unusual.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's a neat component of how he works.
Yeah, and so I think with what we have, the space within there, I think I don't want to trample that too much, because I think those considerations have been considered. And like, for example, make it longer, smaller, or whatever, shrinking it, or where the wings come. I think how the artist has suggested is fine, and that's my comment.
My note quickly. Okay, groovy. Evan, sure.
Yeah, I appreciate this and the previous one, and not necessarily the content, but the fact that they meet some criteria you'd want for interpretation in art, and that they grab your attention from a distance and they invite you to come closer to see detail. This one does especially well, and then you leave with a message. And those three components to me are essential. And I agree with Counselor Davis on this. I think the artist had it right for getting, meeting all three of those categories, the size of the wings and all that, we have to trust their judgment, that's part of the, especially with the shadow and the lighting, of drawing in a viewer to look closely. And then it's brilliant using the words in there that we'll decide later to cause someone to reflect upon the whole meaning of the piece. So, I'm like Counselor Davis, I'd leave it as is, and I like it as is.
And I'll just share, if it does end up coming to my desk for final approval, I do get a little more nervous if we're talking about with something that is structural, suggesting changes feels a little different than picking a different item to paint. So I get a little more nervous to be the final stamp on that case. Sandra, anything you'd like to share?
I do. Thank you so much. I guess first, I also agree that I like it as is. I find this haunting and sacred all at the same time, and I'm grateful for the subtlety of it and the message of it. I will say just really quick that I worked as a dispatcher for a while, and you always have some hard and crazy things that happen, but I will say I worked the graveyard shift, and so a lot of weird things would happen on the graveyard shift, right? And it was such a peaceful thing when you know that your officers are home, that they have checked into their driveway and they are done for the day and they made it home safe and everything is fine. And I find that that's what this does. And I think it's a really great rendition. I love that it's on that building. I like the size of it. And I think it should give strength to the people knowing that there are men and women out there that are willing to go out into the unknown every single day and every single night and work for us in our city. And I absolutely love this.
Okay. So all five of our folks and Mayor Lewis have offered a couple of thoughts. You have a proposed action before us. It sounds like there's, I jumped ahead. I was jumping ahead to pre-read the proposed action for the public hearing agenda item. That's not what was before us. We'll get there in a second. Does anyone feel moved a certain way, or do we want to? I am just going to fully disclose, if we're talking about accepting the max recommendation to adjust the size and positioning, I'm pretty nervous to be the one to sign off on that because it is structural, but I will honor the intention and direction of council. But
I'd like to make
Sure,
a
Drew.
motion here. I move that we approve the design by Ken Call without any of the recommended edits that have been suggested.
Second.
That was without, to be clear.
without and to approve the professional services agreement.
Thank you. Yeah,
With
and to approve.
that.
Sorry, yeah, to approve the professional service agreement. So
Second.
Lori, is that good enough for you? Okay, I've got a motion from Drew and a second from Sandra. Further discussion before we go to vote.
I guess I'll ask a question.
Sure.
Just to, what were some of the conversations within the MAC about those revisions potentially with the size of the wings? How in depth did you all talk about that? What were some of the the heat checks on those conversations?
Yeah, some of the conversation initiated in actually the selection panel. Chief Dollinger offered some notes about the size of the badge in relationship to the size of the wings. And so I think that those comments kind of came into the selection panel and then also to the Arts Commission. And, I think what everyone involved in the selection process noted is that it's a tall, skinny space. It's how that space is, it suggests a tall, slender artwork. Also, one of the quirks of this space is that the height of the sculpture, if it sits below the level of the sign that you see there, it's in the dark in this slide, but yeah. So if it's below the line of that sign that says City of Moscow Police Department, it's going to feel truncated and too small for the scale of the building. If it's right at that same height of the sign, it's a visual stop sign, just compositionally for the front of the building, it's not going to do it any favors. And so the artists, or the Arts Commission recommended that we set a minimum height of 14 feet to get it up above the level of that sign. And to give it a big, a big decisive presence in front of the building, which is, when you drive by there, it's a considerable piece of architecture. And so the edits, I think, are, ultimately, I think the original thought with the edits is to make sure that the work reflects the content and the character of the work that's being done in that building. But if there are visual concerns, the door is open to address those as well. But really, it's council's direction to say, what you'd like to see here.
No, I appreciate that. That addresses some of my questions. I just, and I think that with what is presented, and hearing kind of like the height qualifications, because I know the slender space of that, and again, not wanting to feel diminished in incapacity. So thanks, Megan.
Madam Mayor?
Sure, Evan.
Megan, if you could, in this depiction here, what height is that final
It's-
relative to the building?
I do have that handy if you need it.
You have
I
what?
have it, I have it handy. The sign, the City of Moscow Police Department text is shown as 11, no, I'm sorry, 14, it's 14 feet from the base of the building. Is that right?
Well, each of the segments of, and I'm not sure if the artist is showing us everything on the building to scale, but I know that each of the segments of that metal cladding in this alcove, they're 4-foot sections. And so I believe he's showing us that at, 14, around 14 feet.
And that was the minimum by which you.
That's the minimum. Yeah.
Scott, sure. Sorry. And then Evan, if you have follow up, sorry.
No, that's what I wanted to know. Even though I like it as is, I'm going to probably vote against this and allow the Moscow Arts Commission to have their say after we see the final representation from the artist. And because you can convey our concerns, their concerns, and I think work something out. I'm afraid if we pass this as presented, then we've taken some of those final tweaks out of it. And so even though I agree with the motion, I'm going to vote against it. So that's just a.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Scott.
Was the plan, I don't remember, I was at the Arts Commission, I don't remember, is the plan to still hold it to a 14-foot minimum for the final?
Yes, that's the intention.
That was the intention.
Yeah, that it would not go shorter than 14 feet. Yeah.
And then, I'm inclined, to listen, with Chief Dollinger, I know he's gonna be walking by this every day, and for me, I feel like, me personally, it's gonna mean more to him than it will to me. And I feel like for me as a council member, I'm gonna lean towards, his suggestions, and I think the placement of those and how it looks at the end, I know we really won't have a say, but the mayor will, and the MAC will review the next one, but I have structurally, he's gonna be the same one who's gonna design it. He's not gonna design it, so it's gonna fall down if he changes it. So, that's how I kind of leaning to trusting the artist and the MAC Commission to really grasp the concepts that we're looking for. So,
Okay. So to reiterate, we had before us a motion and a second to approve the design sans without the edits as recommended by the MAC and approve the associated professional services agreement. So we'll vote on the motion before us, which again is to not move forward with the MAC recommended changes. Sorry, MAC being Moscow Arts Commission. We have so many acronyms around these parts. I'm sorry, I got lazy with it. So with that, Bryce.
No.
Sage is not here. Sandra,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
Scott,
No.
and Evan.
Nay.
Okay, so that motion fails 3-2. Great. Further discussion.
Yeah, it puts you on the hook though. for-
It's AR, y'all, that is the name of the game and I'm used to it in this job. I just wanted to share, for some reason, the public art piece in particular makes me apparently feel more nervous than the other things. So, great. Does anyone feel moved in some kind of way?
I move that we approve the design by Ken McCall with edits as recommended by the Moscow Arts Commission and the associated professional service agreement.
Second.
Motion from Bryce, second from Scott. Further discussion before we go for it. Okay, same order. Bryce,
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Drew.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Evan.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Megan.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Megan.
Please pass our thanks to MAC for their thorough review. And yeah, it's this MAC Moscow Arts Commission works on some fun things. So item 7 on our agenda. We'll have you in just a second. We'll have a public hearing. But first up is the item number 7, public hearing ordinance amending Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapters 1, 3, 4, and 6 regarding single-family dwellings, two-family dwellings, and bed and breakfast inns with Mike Ray. And to clarify, after Mike gives us the overview, the public, because it is a public hearing, will be able to accept public testimony in favor of the change proposed, against, and of a neutral nature. And then council will deliberate. So Mike, walk us through what we have tonight.
Thank you, Your Honor, Council. So before you tonight, we have a proposed ordinance, which is the culmination of about 6 months of work by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So just to provide you with a little bit of background, City of Moscow Community Development Department has observed the evolution of building plans being submitted for two-family dwellings, which increasingly have multifamily elements. Recent building permit applications and construction plans have also been submitted for structures represented as two-family dwellings, but which are designed to function as and be leased as multifamily dwellings. It appears that the structures are being represented as two-family dwellings to avoid health, safety, and welfare standards, so ADA, life safety, off-street parking, and other federal, state, and local building standards, which would normally apply to multifamily dwellings. Multifamily dwellings, which are defined as 3 or more dwellings within a structure, require fire alarm suppression systems, ADA accessible units with accessible site amenities, off-street parking requirements, common open space as well. Two-family dwellings do not require fire alarm or suppression system requirements. They're not subject to ADA requirements, and they also have a much lower parking requirement and no ADA parkings required for single and two-family. So just because there was quite a bit of discussion over fire sprinkler requirements and why don't we just require those for two-family dwellings. So the state of Idaho requires municipalities to adopt the building codes which are adopted by the state. We've adopted the 2018 IBC, the International Building Code, which covers multifamily commercial buildings. Municipalities may adopt stricter standards with the IBC. The 2018 International Residential Code, IRC, which we've adopted as well, covers single-family and two-family dwellings. We're only allowed to adopt stricter standards only in certain chapters. And so the chapters that cover current fire sprinkler systems and fire alarm systems are not required, and municipalities are not allowed to require those. Before we go through some floor plans, just wanted to run over a few definitions that we currently have within the zoning code. So dwelling unit is defined as a building or portion thereof providing complete housekeeping facilities for one family. And then underneath our family definition, there are certain elements. So there shall be no more than one family per dwelling unit. And then as far as unrelated individuals living together as a single housekeeping unit, typically limited to 4 in most zoning districts. And then it further defines what living together as a single housekeeping unit means. Shall mean where all occupants of the dwelling unit enjoy a common right to use the entire dwelling, despite informal arrangements among members to designate certain areas as individual sleeping spaces, and where such persons share household living arrangements, including, but not limited to, rental or mortgage payments, utility payments, groceries, chores, maintenance of the premises, and common sanitary living and cooking supplies and or facilities. So the first floor plan we have here is just a typical duplex that normally gets submitted to our office. You can see the first floor, the entry into the space. You have common living, dining, kitchen areas. There's a small bathroom, office, and a garage. This is the other dwelling on the other side here. You go up to the second floor via the stairwell, opens up into a hallway. You have 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, and shared laundry. So you can see the shared bathrooms, all accessible via a hallway, as well as the laundry facilities. The next set of floor plans just shows the evolution of what we've been seeing in community development. You can see this is the first floor in the basement. Entry is up via a couple stairs into a landing located here. You enter into a stairwell. There's a doorway width opening, which accesses the kitchen, living room, and dining, a bathroom, which they've labeled here. And then you can either go upstairs or downstairs. Downstairs, similar layout. You see kitchen sinks, cabinets, refrigerators in each one of the bedrooms, only this area is labeled as a bedroom. Same floor plan, essentially. There's a bathroom here. A door, which is accessible via the stairwell. Then you go up to the second and third floors. You can see the same living arrangement. So what's labeled as a bedroom, which is accessible via the stairwell, closed lockable door. You have kitchen sinks, cabinets, and refrigerators in each one of these areas, which is labeled as a bedroom. You get to the fourth floor, similar living arrangement as the other floors. And in reality, what these bedrooms are being used as essentially is living, kitchen, and bedroom. So you can see kind of the layout that resembles really the first floor, which is traditionally the kitchen, living, and bedroom floor. Taking a look at parking requirements, like I mentioned before, much different between multifamily and two-family. Two-family, if you were to apply it to this last floor plan, 2 spaces plus 1 for every bedroom in excess of 4 bedrooms. 4 parking spaces are required for the entire structure. Multifamily, if each one of these bedrooms is a dwelling unit, 1.25 spaces per studio or 1-bedroom apartment is the calculation, and 13 spaces are required for a multifamily structure. And then just further showing the evolution of where we've come from. So this is the first floor, second floor. You can see another set of floor plans entering into the common stairwell. There's doors, individual bedrooms, same common housekeeping facilities in each one of these areas, which is labeled as a bedroom. You have a refrigerator, kitchen sink, cabinetry, microwave, and a washer and dryer within each of these spaces. Then you go to the third floor, and essentially just to say that all these bedrooms are sharing common housekeeping facilities. Off of the stairwell, you see a kitchen, which is about 7 by 8 and includes a oven, refrigerator, and a sink located here. So these recent building permit plans submitted as two-family dwellings were determined by our department to be multifamily dwellings based upon our existing city code. After a review of the permits issued over the last couple years, it was determined that clarification of the existing code was needed to further address the intent of these definitions. And so there are a number of definitions that are proposed to be amended and expanded upon. The first one is bedroom, which currently reads a room within an apartment unit other than a living room, kitchen, bathroom, eating area, or utility room, which may be used for sleeping purposes. We're going to amend that to say that a room other than a living room, kitchen, or bathroom containing an egress window and a minimum of 70 square feet of floor area with no horizontal dimension less than 7 feet. And essentially, this is the same definition of a bedroom that's in the building code. So we're just mirroring that. And then moving on to say sinks, final or rough-end plumbing, or other plumbing features that could be reasonably expected to permit or allow the installation of a sink should not be permitted within any bedroom. All bedrooms shall be accessed from common areas within the dwelling unit, such as a living room or kitchen, shall not be designed in a manner which would allow independent occupancy unless otherwise permitted by this code. So just the last 2 floor plans that we just saw, essentially just accessing the bedrooms via that stairwell, not going into the common areas within the dwelling, such as a living or kitchen, and then individual sinks that could lead to kitchens within those bedrooms. And so we just wanted to state that within the bedroom definition. Next definition would be single-family dwelling. So a detached building or manufactured home specifying containing one kitchen, designed for and occupied exclusively by one family. Currently, our practice is in large single-family dwellings, we allow a second kitchen is permitted so long as there's a deed restriction. So we're just going to codify that because that's common policy currently. So we're just going to say a second kitchen may be permitted with a recorded deed restriction so long as the property is used as a single-family dwelling only, with no physical separation established to separate living quarters within the dwelling, which would allow the structure to be used and occupied by two families living independently of each other. Dwelling unit is the next definition proposed to be amended. So currently a building or portion thereof providing complete housekeeping facilities for one family. We're going to insert housekeeping facilities provide permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. Shall be limited to one kitchen and 2 washer and dryer sets per dwelling unit unless otherwise permitted by the code. So we went back and reviewed the last couple years of building permits. There are about 111 standard plans. And originally it was just limiting to one kitchen and 1 washer and dryer set. There was about 3 large single family dwellings that contained 2 sets of washer and dryers, and these were typically in closets off of the master bedroom. And so the Planning and Zoning Commission had proposed to up that to 2 washer and dryer sets for the limitation. And then kitchen, so currently pretty broad definition, any rooms used or intended or designed to be used for cooking and or preparation of food. There's been a slight change between Planning and Zoning Commission and Council, so I'll go over what the commission ended up working on, and that's what they voted on. So that portion of a dwelling unit devoted to the preparation or cooking of food for the purpose of consumption by residents of the dwelling unit. Any food preparation areas with cooking facilities, an example, stove, oven, hot plate, and or microwave oven, refrigerator, or sink, or a natural gas stub or supply, or a 220-volt electrical outlet wiring as a kitchen for the purposes of this code. There was some concern that if we had a refrigerator and then maybe some cabinetry, you were going to stuck with essentially defining that as a kitchen. And so we reworked that definition between the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council tonight. And so really just changed the last sentence. So for the purposes of this code, a kitchen is a food preparation area containing cabinetry and or countertops, a sink, and 1 or more of the following: a refrigerator, cooking device, dishwasher, a natural gas stub or supply, or a 220-volt electrical outlet wiring. So really just getting to the crux of where a kitchen begins, cabinetry, countertops, and a sink, and then additional elements from there. Other issues, looking at maybe Almond-Asbury area, but they've started to expand out into other older neighborhoods and newer neighborhoods as well. In certain zones, we allow multiple structures, multiple dwellings on an individual lot. And you can see instead of developing multifamily buildings, which may be one building, open space, and a shared common parking area, we're starting to see, or we have seen, quite a bit of multiple structures on these individual lots, and most likely they're duplexes. And you can see these areas where a number of lots each have multiple structures upon them. So these are all essentially duplexes. You have parking off the alley, and then there's multiple driveway approaches. There's not really any common open space because the structures are separated by about 6 feet of separation, and they really function as multifamily dwellings, but they get around a lot of the multifamily requirements because they're just single and 2 family structures on the lot. So in order to address this, the functional open space currently reads for the definition: land within a development which is permanently reserved as open space free from permanent structures, useful for recreational or social use by the residents of the development, planning to strike, or others. Such space should not include streets, roadways, or parking areas. So striking that last portion and really just defining what would be functional. So such space shall be located on the ground level and may be provided via a private yard, deck, or patio area. Functional open space should not include parking areas, and the smallest dimension of such open space shall not be less than 15 feet. And this is fairly common with open space requirements. You have a minimum dimension. Previously or currently with multifamily, developments, sometimes it's just the 5-foot green setback between the building and the property line. It's really not functional space for the occupants of the dwelling. So setting that at 15 feet so it's actually functional for the residents. And then other adjustments. So currently there's open space requirements. We have R4 through neighborhood business and then general business and motor business. We propose adding that to R3 as well. And then moving on to design requirements for parking lots. And so there's a limitation. You can't back out onto the street from a driveway or parking area unless you're a single family or 2-family dwelling, or if it's on an arterial street. And so just functionality of these single and 2-family dwellings when you have multiple structures on an individual lot, being more of a multifamily development, we're going to add that limitation onto if there's more than one detached single family or 2-family dwelling upon a single lot, they can't back out onto the street. So. And then tandem parking requirements, single family, 2-family, twin home, and townhouse dwellings are currently exempt. They're allowed to do a tandem configuration. Multifamily cannot, only in certain circumstances. So under these conditions, so the purpose of parking design is to provide enclosed garages for resident use. The tandem parking spaces, so the parking spaces within the garage and the front of the garage are assigned and furnished by use of the occupants of the single family dwelling unit without separate additional compensation. And no more than 50% of the required parking may be provided in the tandem configuration. So we're proposing to amend this to lump the more than one single or 2-family dwellings on an individual lot with the multifamily requirements. And then we move on to the off-street parking schedule. So this is where we have compact space requirements. There's 35% total spaces allowed to be compact. We discussed fractional requirements, area calculation, and we're proposing to add a section here, bedroom calculation, to state that any separate room which meets the definition of a bedroom, which could legally be used as a bedroom, regardless of whether such room is labeled as a den, study, office, or similar, shall be counted as a bedroom for the purposes of parking calculation. Rooms that meet the definition of a bedroom, which are separated by a narrow corridor and could allow for the separation of the areas into individual bedrooms, shall each be counted as a bedroom for the purposes of this parking calculation. So we were getting plans. There were obviously bedrooms, they had egressable windows, met the minimum size requirement of the building code, but were labeled playroom, study, office, and you shouldn't be allowed to just get around parking requirements by labeling a bedroom as something else and using it as a bedroom. So this is really just to codify that requirement. And then in that second example I provided, there's the narrow corridor, which is kind of being used as a kitchen, separating the two individual areas. You know, each of those areas met bedroom requirements, and they shouldn't be able to call just the whole area as a bedroom. It's two individual bedrooms in that circumstance. And then we reviewed the off-street parking requirements and saw that twin home and townhouses. So typically for single and 2-family dwellings, it's 2 per dwelling unit plus 1 per bedroom in excess of 4 bedrooms. But twin homes and townhouses were just 2 per dwelling unit. So we were starting to see plans for twin homes and townhouses that had 8 bedrooms per unit. And it was just a flat 2 per dwelling unit. And so we saw a loophole there. And we're proposing just to adopt the 2 per dwelling unit plus 1 per bedroom in excess of 4 bedrooms, just like we have for essentially all the other residential except for multifamily. So as I mentioned previously, we reviewed 111 normal single-family, 2-family, twin home, townhouse plans from 2024 to 2025. We reviewed those using the proposed changes, so parking requirements, sinks and bedrooms, washer and dryer sets. All the plans reviewed were in compliance with those proposed changes. And then a couple other minor amendments here. So this is just really a determination that we previously made. So in the use table, you can see there's single family up to 4 unrelated individuals. And then there's single family up to 6 unrelated individuals. And so that's just the occupancy of essentially a single-family dwelling. We would typically apply up to 6 unrelated individuals to 2-family dwellings and townhouses in certain zones. And so we're just going to change that to dwelling unit to carry over that prior determination. And then one additional change, so House Bill 583 that was passed in this last year's legislative session covered short-term rentals. Essentially, state code was amended to prohibit a city or county from imposing different restrictions or obligations on short-term rentals that are imposed on single-family dwellings. And so really the only issue we had with our code was bed and breakfast inns, which are a form of short-term rental. We had those as a conditional use permit in certain zones, and then other zones they were permitted. So we're just pretty much changing this to reflect our single-family dwellings where they're permitted, because we have to allow bed and breakfast inns as permitted uses within those zones as well. So just changing those from conditional to permitted. The Planning and Zoning Commission conducted the public hearing on this proposed ordinance on May 13th of this year, and they unanimously recommended approval to the council. So staff's recommendation for the council tonight is, after considering public testimony, approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary. And I'd certainly try to answer any questions. Yeah.
Any immediate questions before we go to the public hearing portion, and then we can return for deliberation? Evan?
I can't remember, but does the state of Idaho still allow us to have requirements for air exchange within dwellings where, you have to have you establish a single family or even one side of a duplex as having a common HVAC system that includes the ability to exchange air, volumes within the structure? Is that not part of the code in Idaho, or is that disallowed?
I mean, you typically have the setback requirements that allow that space.
No, I'm talking within the air exchange within structures,
Like dictating HVACs, I see.
especially as I'm wondering if look at, anyway, maybe we should discuss that later, whether looking at HVAC systems is another way to determine whether something is a single family or meant for a single family, or it has 8 studio apartments. And so anyway, we haven't looked at that, correct?
Wait, the Planning and Zoning Commission did not.
Okay. I had another question. Did we talk to any insurers about whether or not a structure that is presented to them for insuring seems to have 6, 8, 10, 12 bedrooms, even though it's being permitted as a single family dwelling? Did we talk to any insurance companies to see if they have difficulties with that, or even insuring a structure that is being functionally used different than purported?
I've been called by many appraisers asking about what these structures are, but no, we did not reach out to any insurance companies.
Okay. And I have a concern. Do you have a concern that in the definition for a bedroom, not related to parking, the parking aspect of it seems pretty thorough, but we've identified any of these rooms have been identified for some other function other than bedroom, becoming a bedroom if they have an egress window. Are we discouraging perhaps with this, discouraging egress windows on some of these rooms? Because that's one of the criteria by which we're going to determine that this room that is going to be used as a bedroom, although not claimed to be a bedroom. Do you see my thinking there?
Planning and Zoning Commission did discuss this a little bit, but I mean, it's hard to control what people do on the inside of their private homes. And if they choose to use an area as a bedroom, which doesn't have an egressable window, it's hard for us to really control that without going into their houses and inspecting this. So.
And
All right, that's good for me for
okay,
now.
so my preference would be for us to go to, unless there's further clarification questions for Mike immediately, I'd like us to go to the public comment portion and then we will get to the deliberation portion. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I have a list.
I heard you typing. I know.
I-
And I
I would
welcome-
rather hear
I
from the
love-
public and then,
Okay,
yes.
groovy. So please come back up. Yes, thank you for being patient with us. So we during the public hearing, we are happy to accept testimony in favor, against, general, mixed nature. Just let us know what your name is, where you live, and it's okay if you don't know straight out of the gate if your comments are related to being in favor, against, or neutral in nature, but sure. Drew, what? Oh, sorry. And let me just make sure that I'm not grouping this. Bill, what did I forget?
You could just officially open the public hearing?
It is open as of 8:25 and 2 seconds on the clock. Thank you. I appreciate that. So please
All right.
introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Rigel Tavella, and I went to college in Moscow and then came back a few years back. And while I was gone, I lived in LA and I was an affordable housing advocate and an anti-slumlord activist. So this is where I'm coming from with this. I read all of this, and Madam Mayor, City Council, I would encourage you to reject this entire thing and rebuild this, because we're trying to legislate something that you don't actually have code for. Some of the plans look very much like single room occupancy, which is a very sustainable way to provide affordable and supportive housing to the very lowest of income, where you have your bedroom in the common living area, or you have what's called a bachelor or an efficiency. Neither of those have kitchens. They just have a sink in the bedroom. This is what this does is you need to codify single room occupancy, because if you pass this, it's going to be a giant slap in the face to those of us, who don't make enough money to rent an entire apartment. And so we're saying, oh, but it's a duplex. As I was reading this, it did not clarify if this was a brand new build or a retrofit. Moscow has a long history of taking larger buildings and subdividing them to provide housing. This has been going on for over a century. And I feel like these are very different situations that we're trying to smash together. And redefining a lot of these things, these are definitions that affect everyone. Orthodox Jews have at least 2 kitchens in their house, and they shouldn't have to ask permission to have them. Every Italian on the East Coast has 2.5 kitchens. One's the pasta kitchen, one's the regular kitchen, one's the canning kitchen. And I feel like this is something that, don't give this up. I'm going to want a house with 2 kitchens one day. I feel like it's an arbitrary limit, because we're saying, well, we don't want people to one day then subdivide their house, even though Moscow has a history of embracing gentle density. You can see this by the houses that have been subdivided all over town, the old Victorians. And so I would encourage you to reject this and to come back with zoning and regulatory framework to support the super affordable housing. Because what we're doing now, where we're saying, oh, well, we have to put in these sprinklers and this and that, we're putting a very heavy burden on people who are trying to provide the affordable housing by assigning a pernicious motive where there may not have been one. So I would say, when it comes to affordable housing in LA, single room occupancy buildings that have been retrofit are exempted from parking requirements, because for the most part, the people that can afford these do not have cars. This is affordable and supportive housing. So this is for people that really need the very lowest rent, but need to live on their own. So I would encourage you to look at this as not just life safety issues, because the housing plans looked pretty safe. They had egress. These are like apartments we lived in New York. There's a lot of single room occupancy because it's very hard to live there because it's expensive. And Moscow is incredibly expensive. And so I believe that this kind of ignores the reality of existing Moscow, where you're saying, okay, well, we want to, if we're going to build a brand new building on the edge of Moscow, by all means, go crazy with the parking and the open space. When you're trying to add more housing in the center of Moscow, where the people who don't have cars want to live, I think this is excessive and it puts a heavy burden on those who would try to provide housing like this. The same with the green space. And then the duplex. One of the reasons I don't think that this has a lot of bad motives is that when you retrofit a duplex and turn it into a single room occupancy apartment building, you have 2 meters. So the leases are for the individual bedrooms, there's common areas, but there's still just 1 meter. So the infrastructure is the same as a duplex, even though it's being used by several different people who don't need a lot of fancy things. And if this were student living, they also wouldn't need a lot of green space. So I would encourage you to table this, reject it outright, because passing something like this is a slap in the face to the very lowest income people who really need this kind of housing. And it says to the developers, we're going to make this so expensive that you can't provide this kind of housing for them, as well as, you need code for this. I would say amend the code to include single room occupancy so that there is infrastructure zonings, within the code to deal with this sort of situation. Thank you very much.
And Ms. Tovala, did I say that
Tavella.
right? Tavella.
Tavella.
Tavella. Thank you, Tavella. I'm updating my note. Can I just clarify, do you live in the city of Moscow now?
I do. I live on Ridge Road.
That worked. Oh, you mentioned that at the beginning. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It used to be a duplex.
I love it. Okay, groovy. Thank you
It's
for.
not single room occupancy. It's one family now, but there are a lot of duplexes up on Ridge Road.
Yes, there are. Yes. Okay, cool.
So, yes.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else who would like to come to the podium and share your comments in the public hearing in favor, opposed, general, mixed nature? Introduce yourself, where you live.
Hello, everybody. I do live in Moscow, Idaho, and my name is John Slagboom. I have actually lived in one of these subdivided houses in here in Moscow, and it was a great accommodation in a time of need when we needed to move into a place quickly, and it provided housing when we needed it most. So I'm definitely against these changes, and I fully second everything that this gentlewoman suggested. I do have my own comments, though. Housing is expensive here because it is scarce, as we all know, and it is scarce because we have made it hard and costly to build. These changes make it harder for a number of reasons. Not one of these proposals make it easier to build, and every one of them adds cost. And builders pass those costs straight to the people who can least afford it, renters and young families trying to stay in the town that they grew up in. This ordinance is written to protect safety. However, as the firefighter who spoke against this in May mentioned, it will endanger safety. When you choke supply, housing gets scarcer and pricier, and people do the only thing they can. They pack in. And as was mentioned earlier, it is hard to tell what happens inside the home unless you're doing regular government inspections of private dwellings, which I hope we don't plan on doing. That overcrowding is the real fire risk. You cannot regulate a town into a housing shortage and call it a safety measure. Scarcity is the hazard. If supply does not expand dramatically, no amount of regulations will mitigate it. Markets want to relieve the pressure by building more, and this code creates additional barriers, then blames the market for overcrowding it created. Now, if you do want housing that's safe and affordable, the answer is the same. Build more. Remove the barriers. Don't add new ones. Enable and do not punish builder creativity. I do have a few questions. So how does the updated bedroom definition impact accommodations for those living with disabilities if you're going to be eliminating all the different things that you can put into what you define as a bedroom? When you're defining any room with a 220 volt power outlet and a sink, you can say it's for the intention of cooking, but also it sounds like a garage shop with potentially a 3-phase welder. So there's a problem there, in my opinion. And yeah, those were just some questions I jotted down while I was listening to this hearing. I would advise you, or request, that you strike these additions and vote no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Slagboom. Okay, anyone else who'd like to come and share comments for, against, neutral, mixed, unsure? Please introduce yourself. Where do you reside and what's on your mind?
Nils Peterson, Executive Director, Hills and Rivers Housing Trust, 627 North Van Buren Street. I, too, think this is a mistake. I think the root issue is parking. And these changes are trying to codify things to control a definition, to control parking. I think parking needs to be addressed differently. Bill has a book. You don't need to read it. You just need to Google it and read the summary. The high cost of free parking. It really does add a lot to the cost of everything when you add parking. The author is Donald Shoup. So I think you ought to be talking about eliminating parking minimums. Perhaps pick an overlay zone like the Legacy Crossing overlay zone. It's highly walkable. It's already developed in a number of ways. The university is proposing to develop another chunk of it. And just recognize that Moscow is becoming more urban. And we can't bring suburban definitions into our ever more urban community. There is a problem of cars coming to town with students. Solve a car storage problem, which is not a storage in front of every residence, but is somewhere where it's available, and the residences are where it's highly walkable. Just separate those two problems. I'm going to recommend you a book, Missing Middle Housing. It will address single room occupancy and a whole variety of other solutions, which are currently not listed in the zoning code. Revise the zoning code to add more of these building types. Adjust the parking rules to reflect the nature of what they are and where they are. And don't proceed with this amendment. Thank you.
Other public testimony from folks for, against, general nature. Because once I want to clarify, once I close the public comment, it's only going to be up to us for deliberation. So going once, going twice. Okay, we are going to close the public comment portion of the public hearing at 8:37 and 7 seconds since I took too long to say that. Okay, council, deliberation, and Mike is available if we have additional questions. But before us, we have 4 different locations with proposed changes in a bundle. Also to clarify, as stated in the public meeting agenda, P&Z did have a public hearing on this ordinance on May 13th and unanimously recommended approval to council. So, Evan.
Just, I want to comment on a couple of the comments. You know, I could talk about this stuff all day. One, some concerns about trying to create a more noticeable green space or open space. And they say, well, people that need housing, if it's single occupancy rooms, I just want to point out that when we want green space with lots, it's not just for the people living there. You know, we also have climate change initiatives we consider, and having green space and a potential of plants has benefit beyond just the residents of a building being able to go out there and throw a Frisbee. So there's more reasons for it than just the occupants of that building. And the aggregate green space we get in a neighborhood helps to determine whether or not we are addressing some climate change issues. And so I think that, you know, all of those considerations have to come into it, not just whether it's play space for the occupants or a place to take their dog out. Second thing I wanted to mention was that passage of this does not prevent people from building multifamily or doing things such as some of you are suggesting that this ordinance would prevent. What it requires them to do it is with ADA accessibility and with fire considerations. That's our way right now with the ordinances we do have to make sure we are addressing those issues. If we allow multifamily dwellings to be built as duplex without ADA accessibility considerations or proper fire safety considerations, we are opening the city of Moscow to litigation based on recognizing multifamily and not requiring it to be built to multifamily restrictions or regulations. And so I agree with Nils Peterson. Yeah, we have to work through our ordinances perhaps to address housing issues and single room occupancy and all that. But this right now would help remove some of the implied liability the city would have for seeing multifamily dwellings being built without the proper coded requirements. So yeah, I'm going to stop with those because I know Scott has things to say, but I could go on and on. But those two big things, just kind of as a rebuttal to some of the testimony we received.
And I'm still looking for something to make sure I don't misspeak in regards to the climate change thing, but we will come back to that for further clarification. But we have time for deliberation. Who else would like to share thoughts with council?
You guys can go. Like, it doesn't have to be me. But
I
can
don't
go.
know, Scott. I heard
I'm-
you typing. So
I
would
have-
you like
I
to
have
share
quite
at
a
least
few
a couple of your thoughts or queries?
I agree with some of the people who spoke. I don't want to create more rules just to have rules. I think we do need to have consistent rules. And I think part of the issue that we're trying to solve is that there has been an inconsistency in how we are defining it and trying to clean those up. So I understand that's part of it. A couple of things that we've talked about, such as the zoning code already limits unrelated people. So the situation that we were looking at with all those bedrooms and unrelated people, if we already have codes that should regulate some of those situations, like how does the city actually, if we have those in our zoning code, we should have a mechanism to regulate it. And what is the city's mechanism to regulate unrelated people in a home? I guess
I mean, it's largely complaint basis. I mean, you have 8 bedrooms in a home. I mean, it could be an unlimited number of related people is one definition of a family. The unrelated people fluctuates between 4 and 6, but it's typically 4. But yeah, I mean, a plan comes into our office with 8 bedrooms and they rent it to all unrelated individuals. Obviously, that's going to be above 4. But once again, it comes back to what people do in private homes and their private property. And we rely largely on complaint basis from neighbors about the number of people that are living within the home.
have we received complaints based on those homes that we have discussed today?
Yeah, certainly.
Is there any way for us to, has there been any enforcement actions against those homes per those complaints? Or they are found, or were they
And as
found
code currently,
as
as code currently
is there founded or
provides.
unfounded complaints that we have taken steps based on our?
Every year we have complaints like this and that nature, and we do take steps to document and request that the owner provide documentation as to who's living there and provide copies of leases, things like that.
And Scott, can I ask a tag on a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
Mike, do these complaints come from tenants and neighbors?
Both.
Yeah.
Correct.
I was just looking at like the deed restrictions. We want to put deed restriction on kitchens. Well, if somebody converts a kitchen or converts it and it's like that's against the deed restriction, or they sell it and they actually have 3 kitchens, like what teeth do we have in that scenario that would be different than the teeth or to regulate unrelated people?
Well, the unrelated people are still within the zoning, it's still within the code. So they're required to abide by that, whether or not it has a deed restriction or not. Deed restriction is essentially putting future owners on notice that the structure needs to be used in a certain way. And we're knowingly permitting, say, a second kitchen, but you have to keep that internal communication and it still has to abide by the definition of family as far as who's living there.
I'll keep going. I agree with some of the people who said parking. I am of the belief that I would rather have houses than parking. I mean, parking creates a lot of issues. Evan brought up climate change. We're the open space in parking. I think parking is more detrimental than the value you get out of open space, because the open space can be patios or decks that also don't provide, that balance to the climate change. With parking, it eats up a lot of space. It requires a lot of stormwater requirements for detention, treatment. So for me personally, I think reduction in parking, if we are going to try and chip away at some of the housing issues we have, parking is the easiest one I think that we can chip away at, especially in established neighborhoods, because I think people should have homes before they can park in front of their house. The other one I want to discuss is the bedroom requirements for, does it affect anything other than, is the biggest one parking that you're seeing? Is that what we are trying to solve here? I guess if, say, they met ADA fire, if I always feel like parking, especially in some of the ones that we looked at, there's a lot of building and bedrooms, but no space for parking. Is that the one that's really driving the change in a majority of these code changes?
Well, that's one of the impacts is parking. So you certainly have, it should be 2 dwelling units, but you have 10 within a structure as far as it's being leased and used. The impacts that you see in some of these structures as far as spillover out onto the streets, and we hear the complaints all the time from neighbors about the impact that this is creating on some of the existing neighborhoods that these are starting to intrude upon.
Looking at bedrooms, I'm just gonna keep rambling. If anybody wants me to-
I'll give you one more and then
Just
we'll popcorn.
I'll keep going. Trust me.
Finish your bedroom one and then
I was
we'll,
gonna say,
and then
on
we'll
the
rotate.
bedrooms, if you look at even the parking requirements now, there's 2 for a single family house. And that's regardless of size. You could have a 2-family house that's 4,000 square feet, or you could have a 2-bedroom house that's 800 square feet or 9. And I feel like looking at the bedroom requirements and parking, if we were going to continue with that, I think there should be some consideration to the size of the homes, because if we're trying to build affordable housing, a smaller home, they're not going to need as much parking. So those are my first.
Mike,
May I ask a
Hang
question?
on, Mike's got
Well, there is
clarification.
it's 2 per dwelling unit. Once you get over 4, there's 1 additional per bedroom above that. So that's typically the sliding scale. We don't really have an efficiency unit right now as far as if you have an 800 square foot house, we still require 2 off-street parking spaces. And so I know Nils brought this up previously, but maybe looking at a reduction for a certain square footage on the lower side of the scale.
Well, I think it'd be my thoughts behind it, and then I'll stop for now. Was that instead of trying to regulate what's a den, what's a bedroom, or what people can use, as we spoke, people are going to stuff people if they can other places. If as parking was regulated based on area, even without the bedroom count, then you wouldn't have to worry what a bedroom was called, right? If it was a 4,500 square foot house, it would need X number of parking, regardless of how many bedrooms were. If it was an 800 square foot building, it would need X number, regardless of their bedrooms. And we wouldn't have to create a lot of definitions of what a bedroom is or regulate if there's a sink in there and some of those other avenues. That was kind of my thought behind it. Of asking them. It's just another way to cut the pie.
It just becomes a challenge because you have unfinished space, you
Yep.
have storage areas. We do that largely with commercial as far as a square footage calculation. But it just becomes more challenging with residential. It's an equity, essentially it's equity, right? You shouldn't be able to say that you have 5 playrooms when you're using them as bedrooms to get around parking requirements.
Because word I want to clarify is, and I do appreciate I think Nils' caution is correct, and sorry, Mr. Peterson's caution is well placed to remind us that sure, if Moscow's growing and becoming more urban, we should be leery of applying suburban definitions to an growing urban situation. However, while I am interested in high density and increasing our inventory, it's not worth doing it at the cost of us authorizing bad actors who are interested and fully understand our market, which is captive students, some who have parents who are willing to pay their leases for them, but it is not worth us not addressing what staff has brought to our attention, which is asking for clarification of the code that we work with, that the ordinance and the framework in which they are making these decisions to go and endorse or not endorse or guide these developments. I am concerned that there are people who are doing development in town who fully understand. We are a college town. We have a transient population. You may only be here for a semester or a year or 18 months. And I'm not sure we're going to get it 100% right, but I know that if staff comes to us and says that the working definition we have in code is not meeting the situations that are before them, and the right course of action is to ask planning and zoning, which is a body of peers and our citizens who are appointed to address these things. If those conversations happen there and this is what is before us, I'm not sure a sweeping denial is going to make sense. And again, our market is a little bit different than a different place that is absent some university presence. So I'll get off my soapbox because this is your time for deliberation, but I really wanted to get that out there. Sandra, Drew, or Bryce, anyone have thoughts you'd like to share?
Sure.
Sandra, go for it.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate what you just said, because this is what's really been going through my mind a lot. Gosh, do we need places to put people? Yep, we do. We need it affordable. That said, I know I have lived in a closet before as a student. That's not safe. That was really, grateful I could, right? Grateful I had friends like, hey, we know that you're out for a couple months. Come stay in the closet. Okay, great. Thank you. Not the safest thing I ever did, right? Grateful I could do it, but I don't want someone to be in that situation because the living arrangements were potentially very dangerous to do that. I've had friends in Seattle going to University of Washington who, again, a house with 4 rooms, and I think there were 13 people there, and there, again, some in a closet. You had bunk beds that had 3 beds, and yep, it works, and you end up leaving with some cool college stories, right? Hey man, guess what I got to live through? But they were the ones that got to live through it. I'm not as concerned about the parking. Maybe I should be, but I'm really more concerned about the sacrifices people make to live somewhere, and sometimes those sacrifices aren't worth it. And I think we have to be very cognizant of that. And that's why exactly what the mayor said, when we have gone through and looks like, is it perfect? Nope, not perfect. But I think this is livable, right? And I think we need to be mindful of, yep, we want places for people to live, but we also want those people to live. And so this is a thing that makes me very nervous. And there's no magic button to say, to approve, and to make it all good. But I think what we have before us now is a good start.
One thing I do want to clarify before I forget, 2023, I think the Idaho legislature passed a bill that limits what cities and counties are able to regulate as far as like banning like natural gas and things like that in homes and residences. And this was in the height of a conversation that was happening in Washington State, at the Washington State legislature, about banning and prohibiting new construction having natural gas in. So I understand why those in Boise had that conversation, but I do want to caution us. For me, the conversation about the shared mutual functional space is the keyword functional. I do agree that the side effects are positive things, like potentially having some green space for your dog or you to see the light of day and not directly into your neighbor's bathroom. But I do want to caution us about what we are or aren't able to decide tied to the climate change conversation, thanks to our friends, the legislature in Boise. So Drew or Bryce? Drew. Okay. Sorry. Bryce, go for it.
And thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. And I appreciate you bringing kind of how this works its way up from planning and zoning and all the work that they did to kind of hear public testimony during that meeting on the 13th. And I think where I fall, and you even mentioned, Mike, in some of your commentary is, I think that what this does is it just allows for more consistency in the rules for everybody to play by the same rules. And for me, as it relates to that, and as it relates to, I think, putting better safety parameters in place, especially when high density college students are going to just try to live wherever they're going to live. You know, I get really nervous about the idea of people being crammed, as Sandra was saying, in a space that ultimately becomes unsafe, and them not knowing how it became unsafe and why it's unsafe. But then, you know, when things or potentially things could happen, it comes back to us and being like, wait, this zoning should have been tighter. This zoning should have been more clear on how it was rented or how it was sold. So I'm in favor of moving forward on this. I know we're not at that stage yet, but just where I'm leaning for what it's worth, because I think that this does provide more consistency. I think this does provide more clarity for all involved.
Thank you, Bryce. Drew, and then if anyone wants to go round two, we can go for it. Drew, what would you like to share?
Oh, good evening. It's good to deliberate tonight. And thank you for all the people that have came up and gave opinions and testimony of where they stand on the issue, whether it be tonight or through email. You know, my comments always, I always refrain and go back to the apertures of which I've been trained professionally. And also based on personal experience, I've lived 3 years of my life without a car as an adult. That wasn't before a driver's license, just to clarify. You know, I've lived 3 years of my life, and it's like wonderful, but also those places had like incredible infrastructures where I didn't need to have a car because everything was walkable. And while we're talking about books, Walkable City is a great book to go. And thank you for Nels again inviting people to read The Missing Middle. I love that book. I've taught from that book, and it's a good book, just in general. One thing I'd like just to bring to fellow counselors this evening is this is just adding clarification to our what has been discussed tonight. This is clarification. I'm not really interested in topics of we do need clarification because this is what our staff is confronting on a daily basis. And we need ways to mitigate and to also help clarify safety. We've talked a lot about art tonight and creativity. I like to think that I fall into that camp professionally, but more importantly, I fall into the camp of life safety. And especially in terms of fire. And this is not prohibiting multifamily by any means or any stretch of the imagination. I'm actually for that. But it does have to meet certain things for the tenants to be safe. And this is part of what our responsibilities are as council. I would love not to own a car personally, right? I have a nice, really old truck that I do like to drive, but I'd really like just to walk everywhere if I could. But we also live in North Idaho, and if you draw, it's very difficult to do anything without a car. And I know that there are ways that people do that, and I commend you. But the reality is we live still in North Idaho in a town of, under 30,000 people population. That being said, also things I like and appreciate about this clarification that is before us this evening that has been recommended by planning and zoning for us is if you haven't developed or worked on a development team as design professionals, contractors, anything really, I'll just say, like if you draw a dot and put 100 miles around Moscow, Moscow's a pretty great place to develop in my opinion, and it's not going to change that. I've worked in many jurisdictions where it's nearly damn impossible to get anything built. It takes years. I'm working on 5 years on an affordable housing unit somewhere we'll say west of me, where I currently reside. And it's painful. And talk about difficulty getting things developed. And so I don't see how this is bringing clarification, not difficulty. So I'll wait for round two to address anything else.
Okay. And I'm happy to go round two for deliberation. I felt very strongly in my time on council, it was important that we remind each other that we are here to make good decisions. We don't get paid by the hour. We get paid to make good decisions. But I also acknowledge that we have one more item on the agenda as well as an executive session. So I am interested in hearing and making sure you hear from each other as far as deliberation. I would encourage whatever commentary to be either new questions we haven't asked or additional clarification, if you'll humor me. So Evan, Sandra, Bryce, Scott, who would like to go? Evan.
I just pretty much want to agree with Counselor Davis that we are trying to improve the framework we have now, and we understand and agree with the testimony that says we have to improve that framework, but we're not going to do that backwards. We have potential problems and potential liability for the city of Moscow, the way that our zoning and building framework is being used now. And so we're just dealing with that with this ordinance and these changes to this ordinances. And all the other things are ripe for discussion, and we should continue discussing them. And like I say, the main thing with me, it falls back on who has liability when you know, as the Corporation of City of Moscow knows, that multifamily dwellings are being constructed and not meeting the codes for ADA accessibility and for fire safety requirements, and even the wiring required for kitchens so that you don't have, too many appliances and all that. So we have to address that first. And then maybe in the not too distant future, we'll try to wrap our arms around the bigger issue.
Thanks, Evan. Scott, what else do you have on your list?
I'll pare it down. It's fine. I understand like what we're trying to do is solve one problem. I think there are a lot of things that we could look at. My personal thought is if we were going to solve these problems, we should probably look at, from the beginning and why we have some of these codes. I'm like I forgot, I will butcher her name. The woman who spoke.
Tavala.
Bella.
Gotta update
I
my notes
think
again.
there should be a look at it. I mean, a lot of times codes come up for a specific instance and we make them, and then 10 years down the road, in 20 years, there's implications down there. And I think there's a lot of things. I will hammer on parking and while I am up here until I'm not up here anymore, because I do think that's one of those things that limits our ability to have people have houses. And I know fire safety, ADA access, but there's people who are living in those duplexes, they're still coming to our town regardless. And whether we make these changes and there's not a building like that out there, they are going to live in closets. Like, we're not stopping people from living in, packing in rooms or living in hallways or closets. Like, that's not going to go away. People are going to continue to move here. And us as a city, we need to adjust and be able to help facilitate, improvements so that that isn't the situation. But I know we can only do so much and set the parameters. I just think that there should be probably less of the ancillary requirements and more, and stick with the ADA safety aspects of the code.
Okay. Anyone feel some kind of way tonight? Further deliberation? There's a proposed action drafted before you on the agenda. If someone else does.
Madam Mayor.
Sure, Bryce.
I move that after considering public testimony, we approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and then to be read by title and published by summary.
Second.
A motion from Bryce and a second from Drew. Further discussion before we go to vote. Okay. Sandra.
Aye.
Scott. I can come back to you if you want. I can come back to you.
Yeah.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Bryce.
Aye.
Drew.
Aye.
Evan.
Aye.
Scott.
I'm really split. I'll stick with staff's recommendation. I'll say aye.
That passes with 5 yes votes. And so what that means is our ordinance 2026-4, excellent, 2026-04 reads, it's a long title. An ordinance of the City of Moscow, Idaho, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for the amendment of Moscow City Code, Title 4, Chapter 1, Section 1-6, definitions, providing for the amendment of Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapter 3, Section 3-4, Land Use Table, providing for the amendment of Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapter 4, Section 4-2, Bulk and Placement Regulations Table, providing, oh, did I lose it? Providing for the amendment of Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapter 6, Section 6-2, off-street parking requirements, providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable, and providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from the date of its passage, approval, and publication according to law. Thank you, staff. Thank you, planning and zoning. Thank you, everyone, for giving your feedback. Code is a living guiding. We welcome continued feedback. And if there's data that shows these changes trigger an increased construction cost, we can have that conversation. But I've not seen data to show that yet. So thank you, Mike. Next on our agenda is item number 8, the lot division at 924 Public Avenue with Lucy Falsey. Welcome, Lucy.
Good evening and thank you. Yeah, so tonight we have a lot division application at 924 Public Avenue. The applicants, Isaac and Avon July and Emmett and Renee Love, are proposing to divide their 5-acre lot into 2 lots and an unbuildable parcel that they plan to donate to Palouse Clearwater Environmental Institute hereinafter PCEI. The subject site is on the north side of Public Avenue, about halfway between Orchard and Public. And it's notable that PCEI owns a good chunk of land on the northwest corner of the site. Looking up close, the site is mainly bare field. It slopes up to the north and up towards PCEI. Single-family dwelling and outbuildings there on Public Avenue has access, which accesses off of Public Avenue, but it has a secondary access off of Cherry Blossom Lane there to the east. Here's a rundown of the proposed division with the existing house and outbuildings on the southern parcel, which is 1.6 acres. The northern parcel is 2.8 acres. And the unbuildable tract that they're proposing to develop is that L-shaped 35-foot wide track on the north and northeast sides of the lot. The northern lot will gain access off of Cherry Blossom Lane. The pedestrian access tract is also gaining access off of Cherry Blossom Lane via a pedestrian-only access easement right abutting the public right-of-way there on Cherry Blossom Lane. There was a bit of discussion with that at the administrative committee meeting and conversation regarding making sure that the distance between the dividing parcel line and the south part of that pedestrian tract line are wide enough to accommodate a potential future expansion of Cherry Blossom Lane. And that's recommended later, or touched on later in the recommendations from the administrative committee. The subject site is zoned R1, low density, single family residential. To the west and the south, you have R3, medium density residential. To the north and east, R2, single family, moderate density residential, and that bit of green, the agricultural forest zoning, which is largely a portion of the PCEI land. In creating this subdivision or this lot division, both lots easily meet the zoning standards. The minimum lot size is 9,600. Both lots are over an acre. Minimum lot width is 80 feet. The southern parcel is keeping its public street frontage and is very wide. The north lot is over 400 feet. Minimum public street frontage. Again, the public avenue side's keeping its large frontage. The new northern lot has a 50-foot frontage against Cherry Blossom Lane. And the only setback that's really being affected is north of the existing structures where 20 feet is required. It has over 150 feet, so easily meets all of that. Again, access off of Cherry Blossom Lane and public utilities are available in both right-of-ways. In reviewing the lot division application, the city council may approve the request with conditions, or deny the request. On June 22nd, the administrative committee reviewed the request and forwarded the application to city council with the recommendation to approve the request, subject to the following condition, that the property boundaries be modified to allow a 50-foot of width for a potential future expansion of Cherry Blossom Lane. And so that would be, either the south portion of this or a bit of this dividing boundary line. And the applicants have verbally noted that they are amenable to that change. And staff is echoing that recommendation, and I am here for questions, as is one of the applicants.
Thanks, Lucy. Questions from council? Evan?
Am I right? There's 2 lots being created and one of them has an easement that's going to be dedicated.
Yes, there's currently one big lot. They are creating an additional, so there's one additional parcel and an additional tract, which is just wordage that we use to sort of differentiate that it's not buildable. So in total, one is being split into 3. The L-shaped unbuildable tract does have a small access easement on the northern parcel that's being created.
But one part of the L, we're not going to suggest or require an easement for the other part of the L then?
Well, the L goes, it has just right at the, oh my gosh. No.
Oh, I'm a little scared to hand you a laser pointer, but if we need to.
No
Oh, now
cats
it's not
in the
letting me go
room.
backwards. Okay. We'll get the tour again. Yes. Still not, wait, oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. So this, what is that, a trapezoidal bit right against Cherry Blossom Lane for the entire 35-foot width of the access easement is an access easement that the northern parcel is subject to, and it's for the benefit of the tract, which then goes up and to the west and directly abuts the PCEI land where it can gain access there. So maybe I'm not understanding.
Well, this L is not an easement. It's just something we call, do we have something in the code that's called a tract?
Not in the code per se, but it is something that's common in subdivisions where you have something like a pedestrian way.
Okay, and then are we going to call that a right of way then between the 2 lots, where Cherry Blossom could be extended someday? Are we actually calling that a right of way?
No, that is a question for the future when it potentially does expand. At this point,
Okay.
Cherry Blossom Lane is still ending where Cherry Blossom Lane is ending. The consideration is just to make sure that it stays wide enough so that it can continue.
So
As
there-
it is, it's slightly undersized at 50 feet.
Right,
So
that's what I was wondering about. So it's not a right of way and the access to PCI is not an easement.
correct.
I was gonna
Although it does
clarify-
have a bit of an easement through.
Right, that little bit. but
Existing.
For the most part, okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
And the phrasing, at least in the letter from the applicant, phrases it as, it'll be parcel 1. So that's the 2.81, that's the tippy top, that's the top. And then it says tract A containing 0.059 acres to be owned by PCEI. So this is what they are calling tract A in the application. Here is parcel 1 and here is parcel 2. So tract A being, and it's really steep, right? That's the idea.
It
that it's
is
a very
pretty steep and it is very limited just to pedestrian access.
So the applicant letter at least says, since PCEI provides our community with nature trails, we would like to donate a 35-foot wide public access pathway on the north and east borders of parcel 1 to PCEI to provide another public entry point to the walking paths. This is designated as tract A and is a non-buildable tract. So I don't know if tract is in our own definition, but tract at least is a consistent phrasing throughout. But
Yeah.
It's a term utilized to describe.
not a parcel and not a right of way.
It's just a term that's used.
It's attractive.
Hey, nailed it. Nailed it. That's pretty good for 9 o'clock, man.
Doing great. We're doing great. Evan, did you have other?
Yeah, I don't
Question.
see what it is. You know, I'm just trying to define that. I
Yeah.
mean, we've established easements for pedestrian paths and subdivisions before, and so this is a new one to me. I don't know what that thing actually is, and it's going to be owned by PCI, but it doesn't meet the requirements to be a lot. It doesn't have the proper dimensions, so it's an oddity if that word doesn't have a legal definition that we can hang on. You know, I'd prefer an easement, but
And my sense is if I'm guessing this is what it would take for it to be considered a donation, if that's the next step for the owner, would be to like an easement.
To
I'm-
transfer the ownership.
to
and
transfer
make it
the
to be a
ownership, this
Separate
is-
piece of land. And we specifically made them change the language from parcel,
Oh.
which could be confused as something that was more tied into our zoning standards and could potentially be buildable into a clearly identified tract that was not.
But easement did not apply in the use of the word easement.
No, they wanted to transfer ownership.
Right. That's a great question. This is good to know. Okay. Other questions, comments, clarifications? I know I hear one of the applicants is here. Scott, go for it.
I'll be quick. We've used tracks for stormwater ponds and paths in an easy way. It's something that's been used for as long as I can remember.
You're pretty old too, so.
I'm very old.
Whoa, don't make a
Oh,
pig at the gavel, guys.
And I brought up the cherry blossom and keeping the right of way. There was obviously when they did the other development, a requirement to extend into this property. So I just thought that we should allow there to be a potential for that to go forward. So I think it makes sense for connectivity in perpetuity, because if you leave it less than 50%, 50 feet, it could never be extended unless we change our road standards. So I think it doesn't mean they have to, it just leaves it open for the future. It could be one home, it could be multiples. So that was the thought behind that.
Drew?
As we're reading the packet and the information for me, like this is pretty, I won't say routine, but like it's pretty typical of like a process to go about that. They're going through the proper channels and they're using a benefit they have to benefit something that also can benefit from this. And it's in the right nature of that. So I don't really have any questions or concerns with it. It seems pretty routine in nature.
Okay. Other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion if anyone. You look like you paused.
There's no public comment, right?
There's no public comment. However, the applicant is here. I can invite them. Bill, I'm feeling rusty at 9:16. Help.
Yeah, generally for lot divisions, we notice public comment at the committee level.
Which we did
So we
have
did have
some.
one member of the public who provided comment at the committee level, but generally it's not noticed as a public meeting at the council level.
I appreciate the clarification. Okay.
I have one more thing to say.
Sure.
I think there's some concerns of people that have adjacent property that are going to have a pedestrian path through their backyards. And I'm just going to count on the goodwill of PCEI to make sure there's landscape buffers or, it's when and if it gets used that way, that they do consult with those neighbors to make sure that that's a harmonious, I'm using the harmonious word, a harmonious use of that tract to everyone's satisfaction. Because otherwise I'd like to condition it with a landscape buffer or something like that. But I don't think we have the wherewithal to do that. So I'm going to be in favor of this with the understanding that I believe PCI will make sure that they work out a good agreement with adjacent property owners, as we had to do with the Palouse Path, Latah Trail, and all those many years ago. There was a lot of back and forth negotiation to make sure it was copacetic for all.
Well, thank you. I would entertain a motion.
Yep.
Sandra?
Hold on, I gotta find the right spot here.
That one. Do you want it?
Yep.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Sure.
Sorry.
La-
Just because they
yes.
state in the application that they are donating this to PCI, our decision is regardless of whether they
Correct.
donate that to PCI. So it could be, they could keep it, they could sell it, they could give it to PCI. Our decision is correct regardless of that. Okay, just to make sure.
Now I'm good.
Yes, Sandra, go for it.
I move we approve the proposed lot division with the condition that a minimum of 50 feet of width be maintained on parcel 1 for the extension of Cherry Blossom Lane in the future.
Second.
Motion from Sandra, second from Bryce. Further discussion? Okay. Scott.
Aye.
Bryce.
Aye.
Evan.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
And Drew.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Lucy. I know I think we didn't do them last time. I want to thank Evan for sending us the reports. All I would ask, if there is an upcoming event that your commissions are hosting that you would like to share, that is the only thing I think we should include in our reports, because we do need to go into executive session.
Can I
But
share
if-
one thing that isn't commission that's coming up really quick?
If community related, sure, yes.
Bingo at the 1912 Center for the Humane Society of the Palouse this Thursday.
Yes, and you can bring your own food in, which I do
Yeah.
appreciate. So I'll allow it. Any other upcoming events? And then we do have a shorter agenda slated for the 20th. I do want to hear everyone's full reports then.
I've already forgotten, so you know.
That
Thanks.
too. Any upcoming events?
There is the Transportation Commission at 4 on Thursday, if anybody wants to attend that.
And on the agenda is discussing education opportunities within our community for
E-bikes, E-modes of transportation.
E-modes, yes. But the last thing I'll plug, Wednesday, starting at 8:30 in this room, 8:30 a.m. We hold time all day. It's open to the public. We go line by line through every single line of the budget proposal, every single line item. It is not streamed, it is not recorded, but we'd love to have you here starting at 8:30 in this room, budget workshop. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061F, and note that the meeting will not reconvene upon the end of the executive session.
So moved.
Motion from Sandra,
Second.
second from Bryce. We do need to do roll call vote. I will never forget this. Drew.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Evan.
Aye.
And Bryce.
Aye.
Beautiful. Thank you all for being here tonight. We're going to go into executive session after, I'm assuming, a bio break. Thank you. We'll see you on the 20th.
Bye.